You've seen it before. You come home after a few hours out, and something is wrong. A pillow is torn apart on the floor. The corner of the couch has been chewed down to the frame. Your favorite shoes are somewhere they shouldn't be, and in a condition they should never be in. Your dog is there, maybe looking guilty, maybe just looking at you, and you're standing in the doorway trying to understand what happened. You fed them before you left. You gave them toys. You made sure they had water. You did everything right, and they still destroyed something. Most owners in that moment reach for the same explanation. He's being difficult. She's acting out. He knows better and did it anyway. And from there, the response is usually some form of correction. A firm voice, a gesture toward the damage, a decision to try a different approach next time. But here's what almost nobody tells you before that moment happens. What you're looking at when you come home to destruction isn't disobedience. It isn't dominance. It isn't your dog making a choice to disrespect your space. It's a symptom, one that behavioral science has studied extensively, that has a specific name, and that tells a very precise story about what was happening inside your dog's nervous system from the moment you walked out the door. This video is going to walk you through exactly what's behind this behavior, why it happens, what your dog is experiencing when it does, and what you can do about it starting today. Because once you understand the real reason your dog destroys things when you leave, you stop seeing a behavior problem and start seeing a communication. One your dog has been sending you every single time, and that now, finally, you have the language to understand. Let's start at the beginning, with what actually happens inside your dog the moment the door closes behind you. Your dog watches you leave. The sound of your keys, the way you pick up your bag, the particular quality of a goodbye that's different from just moving to another room. Dogs are extraordinarily sensitive readers of human behavioral patterns, and research on canine predictive behavior shows that most dogs begin registering departure cues 10 to 30 minutes before the owner actually leaves. By the time you walk out the door, your dog's nervous system has already been in a state of anticipatory stress for a significant stretch of time. And then the door closes. What happens next depends on the dog, but for dogs who destroy things in the owner's absence, what happens next is a cascade of neurological events that behavioral scientists have documented in careful detail. Heart rate elevates. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, spikes within minutes. Vocalization begins, often in the form of whining or barking directed at the door or the most recent place the owner was standing. And then, when those initial responses don't produce the result the nervous system is seeking, which is your return, the dog begins to move. The movement is not random. This is the part that surprises most owners when they first encounter the research. The objects your dog chooses to destroy are almost never chosen arbitrarily. Studies on destructive behavior in dogs with separation-related stress consistently show that dogs preferentially target objects that carry the owner's scent. Clothing left out, shoes, cushions from furniture where the owner regularly sits, items near the door. The behavior is olfactory-driven, meaning your dog is quite literally surrounding themselves with your smell in an attempt to regulate a nervous system that is experiencing something very close to what researchers describe as acute social loss. Your dog isn't destroying your things. Your dog is trying to find you in the only way available to them. Understanding this changes everything about how you respond. But before we get to the response, there's a second layer to this that most owners never learn about, and it's the one that explains why some dogs are dramatically more affected than others. Not every dog who is left alone destroys things. Not every dog experiences the same intensity of distress during owner absence. And the variable that predicts which dogs are most vulnerable to this pattern is one of the most important concepts in canine behavioral science: attachment style. Research on dog-owner attachment, much of it building on foundational work from the Eötvös-Loránd University in Hungary, has identified that dogs form attachment bonds with their primary caregivers that parallel the attachment bonds human infants form with parents. And just as in human attachment research, dogs can form what scientists call anxious attachment, a bond characterized not just by closeness and affection, but by an inability to self-regulate in the absence of the attachment figure. A dog with anxious attachment doesn't experience your departure as an inconvenience or a temporary absence. They experience it as the removal of the one thing their nervous system depends on to feel safe. And a nervous system that has lost its anchor doesn't wait quietly. It searches. It escalates. It does anything it can to either find you or manage the unbearable feeling of your absence. The dogs most likely to develop this pattern are often the ones who received the most intense early attachment. Dogs who were never taught, gently and gradually, that your absence is temporary and survivable. The dog who was always within arm's reach, who was never given small doses of alone time as a puppy, who learned that you leaving is always followed by distress, is the dog most likely to be standing in the wreckage of your living room when you come home. If this is already reframing the way you see your dog's behavior, this is a good moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Everything here is built around this kind of understanding, the behavioral science that actually changes how you respond to your dog in the moments that matter most. And there's a lot more coming. Now let's talk about what most owners do wrong in response to this behavior, because the most common reactions are not just ineffective. In many cases, they actively make the problem worse. The first instinct most people have when they come home to destruction is to correct the dog, to show them what they did, to use a firm tone, to communicate that this was unacceptable. This response feels logical. The dog did something wrong. The dog should understand that it was wrong. But here is what the research shows about this approach. By the time you come home and find the damage, your dog's nervous system has already returned to something approaching baseline. The acute stress of your absence has resolved, at least partially, simply because you're back. The dog who is meeting you at the door, tail wagging, is not in the same neurological state as the dog who was destroying things an hour ago. And a dog who is not in a state of distress cannot connect a correction in the present moment to a behavior that happened in the past. What your dog registers when you come home and respond with anger or correction is not the lesson you're trying to teach. What they register is that your return, which should be the resolution of their distress, is now itself a source of anxiety. You have inadvertently added a new stressor to a dog who is already struggling. And over time, research shows that dogs who receive punishment upon owner return actually show increased anxiety during future departures, because now they are anticipating not just the loss of your presence, but the negative quality of your return. The correction makes the departure harder, every single time. What works instead is a two-part approach that addresses both the symptom and the underlying cause. The symptom is the destruction. The underlying cause is a nervous system that has never been taught to tolerate your absence without dysregulating. The symptom, the destruction, can be managed in the short term through environmental management. This means setting your dog up to succeed by removing access to the objects they're most likely to target, providing high-value chew alternatives like stuffed food toys that give the nervous system a legitimate outlet for the tension that builds during your absence, and creating a specific resting space, not as punishment, but as a predictable environment where your dog has learned that settling is possible. But managing the symptom doesn't address the underlying cause. And the underlying cause requires something more deliberate. It requires what behavioral scientists call systematic desensitization to departure cues, combined with graduated alone time training. Systematic desensitization means identifying the specific cues that trigger your dog's pre-departure anxiety and deliberately decoupling them from their meaning. Pick up your keys and sit back down on the couch. Put on your shoes and spend 10 minutes watching television. Grab your bag and walk to the kitchen for a glass of water. Repeat these things enough times without the departure following them, and your dog's nervous system begins to unlearn the association that has been driving anticipatory stress. Graduated alone time training means teaching your dog in very small increments that your absence is temporary and that returning to calm during that absence is both possible and rewarding. This starts with seconds, not minutes. You step outside the door and come back in before your dog has time to escalate. You build duration slowly, always returning before the dog reaches the threshold where dysregulation takes over. Over weeks and months, with consistency and patience, you are not just training a behavior. You are literally rewiring how your dog's nervous system responds to being alone. Research on treatment outcomes for separation-related behavior in dogs consistently shows that this graduated approach, combined with environmental management and the elimination of punishment-based responses, produces significant improvement in the majority of cases. Not overnight, not without effort, but with a reliability that more dramatic interventions, including medications used without behavioral modification, rarely achieve on their own. There is one more thing I want you to understand about this behavior, and it's the one that I think matters most, not just for solving the problem, but for understanding what this pattern is telling you about your relationship with your dog at a deeper level. A dog who destroys things in your absence is a dog who loves you more than they know how to manage. That sounds like a reframe, and it is, but it's also just accurate. The intensity of the distress that drives this behavior is a direct function of the intensity of the bond. Research on canine attachment consistently shows that dogs who display separation-related behaviors have, almost without exception, formed deeply close, highly dependent bonds with their primary caregiver. The problem isn't the closeness. The closeness is the thing most dog owners are working toward their whole lives. The problem is that the closeness was never paired with the confidence that closeness could survive a temporary separation. What your dog needs is not less of you. What your dog needs is the internal experience of discovering that you always come back, that the absence is a pause, not a loss, that the nervous system can find a way to rest even in the silence of your absence because it has learned, through repeated experience, that the silence always ends. Building that confidence in your dog is one of the most profound things you can do for them, not because it will save your furniture, though it will, but because it changes something fundamental about how your dog moves through the world. A dog who can tolerate your absence without dysregulating is a dog who has developed what behavioral scientists call a secure base, an internal sense of safety that isn't entirely dependent on your physical presence. And a dog who has that is not just less destructive. They are genuinely, measurably less afraid. You have the ability to give your dog that. Not with a correction, not with a different kind of punishment, not with anything that addresses the surface of the behavior while leaving the root untouched, but with patience, with consistency, with the kind of gradual, deliberate teaching that tells your dog something they need to hear more than anything else. You always come back, every single time, without exception. That message, delivered through behavior and not words, is the thing that changes this. And it starts the next time you walk out the door. Drop a comment and tell me, does your dog do this? And which part of this explanation surprised you most? And if there's something specific about your dog's behavior when you leave that you've never been able to explain, write it there. Those questions shape every video on this channel, and there is always more to understand.